So many ADHD women don't even consider the possibility that they have ADHD, especially if they've been successful on the outside. If you've ever thought, but I did really well in school, or I'm productive at work, or I can hyperfocus when I need to, so there's no way I could be ADHD, you're not alone. In this episode, I'm breaking down why so many high achieving women miss or doubt their ADHD diagnosis and the hidden signs that might finally make the pieces click. By the end, you'll see why your success doesn't cancel out your struggles, and you just might realize ADHD has been part of your story all along. Be sure to listen. Welcome to the Self Loved ADHD Woman's Way podcast. I'm your host, Jen Barnes. If you're an ADHD woman entrepreneur, ADHD adjacent, or ADHD-ish, you've come to the right place. We'll dive deep into the unique challenges you face, from the inner turmoil to the outer obstacles. We'll blend neuroscience, IFS, and somatic healing, and explore practical strategies to help you navigate the world of entrepreneurship with ADHD with greater ease and effectiveness. I'm glad you're here. Hey, it's Jen. I'm so glad you're here. So, overfunctioning, high achieving women is so resonant for me because that's my story. And it tends to be the story of most of the ADHD women I attract into my life, whether that's my personal life or the work I do with clients, whether that's in my therapy practice or in my coaching business. Either way, I tend to be around a lot of high functioning, or I don't even want to say high functioning, but ADHD women who've been high achieving. And at one point or another, we're doing really, really well until they met their match. And that means different things for different people. And we'll talk about that a little bit because I know I certainly met my match, though didn't immediately turn to an ADHD diagnosis. So before we get into any of that, we'll see if we get there to that piece. I want to keep this relatively short so we're not, going on and on, but also I want to talk about the 10 ways that we kind of deny ourselves an ADHD diagnosis or don't even let ourselves consider that we might, or even if you've been diagnosed, you might think that your diagnosis is wrong because of this kind of stuff. So let's talk about it. I made a list because otherwise I'm not going to remember all 10. So that's what I'm looking down at. The first one I know right away that I want to touch on, and it's one that people talk about all the time. Some of these other ones are not as commonly spoken about, but this one is the big one, which is that a lot of ADHD women and girls don't look like the stereotypical ADHD. Even if you're like me and have combined type or hyperactive type, which is now called presentation in DSM-5, sorry about that. So if you have hyperactive presentation or combined presentation like me, maybe you were never getting up out of your seat during class as a child. But there were signs of your hyperactivity, whether that was fidgeting in your chair. I used to pick hangnails on my skin, which is not great. Now I have like a little fidget ring, or we had things like that. But our hyperactivity comes out, just maybe not in the squirrely sense that we always think about. And so a lot of times we were missed. Also, many of us tended to, because we're women or girls, the expectation, like, it's harder for us to get the same kind of accolades, or it was back in the day at least, to get the same kind of accolades as the boys. And so we had to kind of learn how to keep our shit together at a younger age because more was expected of girls. First of all, a lot of us were expected to be domestic in some way or be good at being domestic. And that was never and has never been a strong suit for me. But also then there was the academic pressure that some of us may have received or put on ourselves. So in a lot of ways, we met the challenge, but we did it through masking with over functioning and people pleasing and perfectionism. And then our high achievements came as a result of that. So it looked like we weren't a squirrely, hyperactive boy. So we did not fit the stereotype, which again is also not doing well in school or not liking school. I loved school. I couldn't wait to start school every September. Maybe that calls me out as the nerd that I always have been, but it was my favorite time of year to write in the fresh notebooks and your new trapper keeper, get it all organized. It was so cool. The fresh folders. So anyway, I love that time of year, and maybe you did too. And so we probably never thought, oh, school was hard for me, because maybe it wasn't. And we also didn't know how long it took other people to complete their assignments versus us, but we'll get to that. So, number one, we didn't meet the stereotype. The second one, and I've kind of alluded to this, is we were master maskers. Like I said, a lot was expected of girls for us to be taken seriously. So we couldn't just be all out there ADHD and have that be okay for people. We would be shamed for that and very strongly criticized for it. So a lot of us learned how to mask, like I said, through overfunctioning, maybe people pleasing, maybe perfectionism, or maybe all three, which is what I call the masking trifecta. And we did it. And so people didn't see our ADHD, even if it was there. There were signs. For me, that was talking too much in class. Like, every report card said super conscientious because I was hyper organized, like almost too organized. Well, once I learned how to do that, which is a different story that I've told on other times. But, or, for you, it might be that you would arrive super early to things, or like I said, hyper organization, right? There's these different ways we mask, but there's ways our ADHD still came out. And for me, it was by talking in class. I'd get in trouble for talking all the time. But for you, maybe it was something else. I know my bedroom was always a mess. Maybe your locker was a mess, but there were signs of ADHD early on, because that's part of the diagnosis. There was something that showed up as ADHD before you were, now it's 12. It used to be 7 with DSM-4, I think. So at any rate, being a master masker made it hard for people and ourselves to see that maybe we've got something neurodevelopmentally going on here. Number 3, strong external structure helped a lot. So for some of us, the external structure that school provided, that workplaces have provided or do provide, they provide enough structure and scaffolding that we are then able to get to feel motivated to do things and to be able to focus to do well. But when you take away all that structure, whether it's our home lives, and so if you're like me, my house is, oh my gosh, not well maintained. I'm working on it. Not well maintained, and also not super clean, which I'm also working on. But those things tend to be harder because there's no structure around it. There's also no money tied to it. So a lot of times when women go off and they're entrepreneurs, it can be very hard to get themselves to do all the things because there's no boss being like, you got to get this done. Or you might, like me, I can feel motivated to do those kind of things because I know that money comes from that. But then my home life, I struggle to care for my home and my properties, things that belong to me, my belongings. It still shows up in some way, even if you still have a job. But then once you no longer have that structure, whether you're retired or you go into business for yourself, you might finally start to see those struggles. That's one way we can meet our match. Number 4, high IQ or giftedness can cover the gaps in our ADHD brain. And this is true for me. My IQ is high enough above average that I was able to cover the gaps with my intelligence. And so even the first time I was assessed for ADHD, which I thought was in my 20s, turns out I was like 31. I thought I had it. Well, I didn't know that I thought I had it. Other people thought I had it, so I got assessed. And the guy was like, you probably have it, but your intelligence is just, and all your strategies are making it hard, like you don't meet criteria. So a lot of times our intelligence can cover the gap until again we meet our match. So for me, I met my match for the first time in taking actuarial exams. I did really well on the mathy ones because I loved math, I loved numbers. That's not reading boring textbooks. But as soon as I got into life contingencies, which is this giant boring textbook, and I think there might have even at the time been another book or two that went with it, like little, it was so boring, and it's all independent study, and it was just hour after hour, and you have months and months to prepare. I just could not get myself to be prepared for that exam no matter what, and I studied a lot, like 5 or 6 hours a day on top of work, and then 18 hours on the weekend, but I'd met my academic match. I needed more time but didn't have it. Whereas other people who were equally or even maybe not as intelligent as me didn't need as much time because they could focus on the boring textbook thing and actually take in the information, whereas I just couldn't. So you might have some kind of experience or story of where your intelligence, your giftedness no longer carried you. And then you were like, oh my gosh, now what? Now what? Reminds me of all those Instagram posts I would see that would say things like, "Hey, ADHD or autistic person, how's your giftedness going for you now?" Or something like that, right? Because a lot of us gifted kids or kids in honors classes or whatever, a lot of us were neurodivergent. Not all, certainly, but it's not uncommon. Number 5, you were praised for your drive. Your overfunctioning and people pleasing earned you validation, which felt really, really good, and then helped you get stuff done. And as a result, our exhaustion and our disorganization or however else our ADHD showed up was often overlooked. So this is super common for a lot of us overfunctioners, high achievers, because it was just like we did so many things well. And because that we were praised for that, then we were motivated to keep doing it because there's that external structure again. But then they didn't see the ways that we struggled, or they didn't notice how it took us that much longer to do things. In high school, so I used to brag that it took me 5 hours a night to do my homework in high school, saying that's how hard my high school was. And yes, I was in all honors classes. But what I realize now is that my classmates who are equally as intelligent as me were not taking that long to do their homework. And I'm like, "Oh, that was one of the signs I missed, was that even though I was bright and I understood everything and I graduated 10th in my class, right? It wasn't like performance wasn't a problem, but it took me longer to get there despite the level of intelligence that I have. So that is one of the signs that gets overlooked because they're just like, oh, you're getting good grades, your GPA is good, all that kind of stuff. And then they don't notice the other ways that you're looking kind of ragged or struggling because you just think it's normal. Why would you think it was any other way? Number 6, long periods of hyperfocus made you think there's no way I could have ADHD. So whether it was working 10 hours on a project or cramming for finals, or I could sit down and do math homework for hours and hours and not lose my attention because that was something of high interest to me. We thought that meant we couldn't be ADHD because until very recently, ADHD was misunderstood as meaning you can't pay attention at all. You can't sustain your focus at all. And that is simply untrue. We just struggle to sustain our focus on things that are uninteresting. So there are some things that we could focus on all day and even not realize we need to go to the bathroom or eat when we're in a hyper focus or not hearing someone call our name. Like if you've heard my story of missing a flight while I was at the gate and it was a Southwest flight. So they say your boarding group, like what, 3, 4, 5 million times. And then they said my name like 2 or 3 times when the plane was going to take off and I wasn't there. And even though I was right there, I didn't even hear it because I was in such a deep hyperfocus. So then we're like, oh, I couldn't have ADHD because, I wouldn't be able to focus that well. But really, that's a hyperfocus, which can be part of ADHD. Number 7, we internalized some of the challenges of ADHD as character flaws. So we just thought like, oh, I'm just kind of scattered, or oh, I always run late, or whatever it was for you. But we just assumed these, or I'm a talker, I talk a lot. Whatever it was, we just assumed these things meant that we had bad character. And that was easy to believe because that's what people said back then. They would shame you and blame you for, oh, you always show up late. That's so disrespectful. Okay, maybe you feel disrespected. And with ADHD, it's not necessarily us being disrespectful. It's truly that we struggle with linear time. So we think something, we're just going to do it real quick. And it ends up taking a half an hour. And we're like, shit, I gotta go. Or we don't, we don't realize how late in the day it is. So there were signs like that, but we just chalked it up to how we were and maybe signs of not great parts of our character. So that can be another way that we hid or didn't believe we could have ADHD. Number 8, a lot of us kept it together in public, but fell apart in private so that people like teachers, bosses, colleagues, coworkers didn't see our struggles. They didn't see the challenges. They just, in fact, a lot of people see me like, oh yeah, Jen's got it so together. She's always so on top of things, which like I can be on top of things, and especially at work and anything to do with my health and wellness and self-care. But again, referring back to earlier in the conversation, if you came to my house, it's not cluttered. Things are put away because I very strongly have worked on don't put it down, put it away. But the last time I washed my tub now was April, and this is September. So gross. The time before that was 6 months prior. I haven't cleaned my floors. I've swept them, but I haven't cleaned them in, I don't even want to say how long. It's embarrassing. It's embarrassing. My bathroom floor I've cleaned a couple times in the last year. It's been probably years since I did something with my hardwood floors, like actually cleaned, which is so gross and so disgusting. But there are signs in our private selves that things are not going well for us, or that we're not functioning fully. That other people, yeah, maybe, okay, if you don't have ADHD and you're listening to this, you're like, well, I can struggle with cleaning. Yes. And for me to do those floors, it feels painful to get myself to do it. To do that bathtub 6 months ago, I had to work my way towards it for like a month and a half and then force myself to do it and make it as fun and interesting as possible. And it was terrible. It was almost like painful, which I know there's all kinds of levels of pain. I'm not talking about it was physically painful, but it was like painful for my brain to have to do. It was just hard. And yes, I'm not diminishing anyone else's pain experience, but for a lot of us, that can be the factor. So, difficulty on the inside in your private life, keeping things together, but everyone sees this nice, put together person. So then they think there's no way we could have ADHD. And then we start to believe the same thing. Number 9. Hormonal shifts. So whether that was postpartum or perimenopause or just even stress, because we get flooded with stress hormones, during those times, we can struggle more with our ADHD. The female hormone events, like postpartum and perimenopause, are directly linked to a drop in estrogen during those times. And because dopamine production and estrogen are linked, closely linked, they're connected. I looked this up once and now I can't remember the actual language for it. But when estrogen drops, it impacts our ability to access dopamine. And then that impacts our executive functioning, which is the motivating, the focusing, all the stuff that we need to be able to get stuff done. So when our hormones shift, then we really struggle. So we're like, oh, but it was only perimenopause. Oh, it's just postpartum. It's just postpartum depression or anxiety. Yeah, sometimes that's all it is. And sometimes there's actually something deeper going on because those instances also exacerbate ADHD. If you've ever been under high stress, you know too that it's even harder to focus. You feel even more scattered. And so even a time of high stress can exacerbate your ADHD. And you're like, oh, I'm just stressed. And maybe it is that you're quote unquote just stressed, or maybe you also have ADHD. And last but not least, you succeeded despite the chaos. So many of the ADHD women I work with have at least a college degree, if not a master's, if not a PhD or PsyD, some of them. And that's a high achievement. Not everyone can do that. And certainly not everyone with ADHD can do that. But that success makes it look like, oh, you couldn't be ADHD. And that checks out because there was a time when doctors would, even still, people won't give us the diagnosis because we have all those high achievements, unless you're going to someone who understands what ADHD looks like in high achieving women. And so we were able to do all this stuff. So people told us, and we told ourselves that, oh no, we couldn't possibly have ADHD because, again, that stereotype we have in our mind is people with ADHD have a hard time in school. They struggle to graduate. They struggle to whatever else doing with school or work. And we rock it. And we tend to rock it because of all the ways we mask and because the external structure of school and work or employer situation tends to give us enough of a boost, enough scaffolding for us to be able to function quite well. But when you take that away, when people retire, when people are on maternity leave, so maternity leave, you've got lack of structure. I mean, except that you've got a baby telling you when to do things, but it's not actually like, defined structure. It's not like a clear structure. It's kind of a whenever you need it kind of a structure. So that one comes with both a hormonal shifts and a structural shift. But retirement, sometimes even promotion, when you get promoted to a level where there's just not as much structure anymore, or even going into business for yourself, that's when we start to notice our ADHD. So I hope this has helped you see for yourself, like, oh, yeah, these are the parts that I have just criticized my character or denied I could have ADHD or doubted my ADHD diagnosis because I did all of these things. But the reality is you can do all those things and still meet full criteria. I was just reassessed and I had no idea. I was actually diagnosed with, like, they said my not anxiety. They said my ADHD is severe. I had no idea. I was like, wait, what? Like, I know I have ADHD, and I thought I had hyperactive type or combined type, and it's combined type. But I never would have guessed my ADHD was severe. I was always like, oh, it's pretty mild. I'm still able to be super productive, even self-employed. And I took this and was like, oh, wow, even I was kind of denying some of my ADHD symptoms. So, anyway, all right, this has been fun. If you loved this episode, I'd love if you would just like it or comment or share it with another ADHD woman or someone you think might have ADHD but is so high achieving they would never consider it. And I would love it if you'd subscribe or follow my podcast wherever you get your podcasts. And last but not least, I've told you I wrote a book, but it's not just a book. It's actually a tangible book. It's a journal book experience. And the book is kind of short. It's only like, I don't know, 149 pages, somewhere like that. But I probably should have added some more journal writing pages in there, so you might have to have a journal with it. But you have this guided experience to help you stop playing small with ADHD. So this is to dig into some of the underlying stuff that goes on. It's not about skills and strategies. And I created a special self-love woman ritual for you to do. And inside the box are some lovely items, like tactile items, to help you with that ritual. 3 different pieces of it technically 4 if you count the matches. But anyway, and it comes in a keepsake box. It is a cardboard box, but it's laminated and branded, and I think it's pretty. So I would love it if you check it out. You can go to jenbarnes.org and scroll down, you'll see it there. Otherwise, I'll put the link in the description of or show notes wherever you're watching this. So feel free to check it out, and I'd love to hear from you. So let me know how this episode was for you, and I'll see you next time. Take care.